Thank you. Wonderful. Welcome to the Just Transition Subcommittee at the Vermont Climate Council. It is March 21st and it's a little after 4 p.m. And the biggest exciting thing is that we have a bunch of new members that we're welcoming. Some are here today, some will be joining us next month, but since everyone was approved by the steering committee, we wanted to welcome people to attend today if possible. And so let me go through. So with our agenda, just running through quickly, we're doing our welcome and check-in, where I'll go through the agenda, and then we'll look at the minutes from last meeting. For anyone who was there, we can, make corrections as needed or approve them. And then just introductions of the new members. We have an update on the youth nominee process, and then just discussion about how to do the orientation and onboarding and what would be helpful. Then we want to talk about what we're going to be doing going forward, which would include potentially being liaisons with other subcommittees. So that'll be a conversation that we do closer to the 5 o'clock time. We'll have some time for public comment at 5:15, and then some other updates from the Climate Council as a whole, Climate Action Office, and things like that. So, and one of the other things that we'll want to just talk about briefly, but if we don't have our full membership here, we probably won't make any decisions, but finding out if this time on Thursdays, on the third Thursday of the month, usually works for folks. And if that's going to be a problem, then we can also revisit timing. So, any questions about the agenda? Oh, and Abby, if you could take notes, that'd be great for me, unless Sophie, you're on top of that. I just saw Abby's question in the chat. I'm just always thrilled when somebody else is the note taker because I'm really bad at that. So no questions on the agenda. Hearing none, I dropped I think everybody was here. So you should hopefully be able to see from me, KK, the link to the minutes from last meeting. I was unfortunately not able to make it. So anybody who was there, if you wanted to review those and make sure you don't see any corrections or anything, and if you want a minute with them, we can look at them. I can share my screen also if that would be helpful. Or Sophie could, I'm not sure if I have that permission.
Look good to me.
Abby, Sophie, were you there? Denise, were you there? You were. Missed your first meeting.
I was there for most of it. I had to step out, but for about 10-15 minutes, but I was there for most of it.
Great. I can't believe I missed that. Denise, so for folks who maybe don't know, we'll go through introductions, but Denise is one of our new members of the Climate Council, and I think maybe there was one meeting that she was on, but it was very brief, and so I got to meet her in person on a Climate Council meeting, but for Just Transitions meetings, it's been, I feel like we're passing like ships in the night. Any questions, concerns, or updates about the minutes for those who were there? Good. All right. Hearing none, we will treat those as approved. And then on to, let's welcome our new members. So we have a whole list of new members, wonderful people, and I'm just so excited. So everybody that we put forward to the steering committee for approval was approved, which is great. I didn't think they would have problems with that. We have a larger subcommittee than most of the others, but that's partly because we want to have a wonderfully diverse group of folks and be able to draw on lots and lots of different perspectives and have multiple voices. So and then the other part of it is that some of the other subcommittees are doing, like, putting policy ideas together and doing this real work, and that's where it can be helpful to have a slightly smaller group, whereas we are trying to help make sure everybody is centering equity in everything that they're doing in what we're in the work of the Climate Council. And so it's a little bit different because it's less project oriented and more guidance oriented, I think I would say. So I would love to have people who were on the subcommittee previously introduce themselves, and then have anyone who's joining today for the first time introduce themselves. And then we'll probably do this again next month because we'll have more new faces, but this is a way to start to get to know each other. So I'll kick it off again because I think a couple people weren't here, but probably almost all the new people were. Kelly Klein, I use she, her pronouns. So I'm a business owner. I own Grenfell Meadery in St. Albans, Vermont. And I sit on the Climate Council as the small business community representative. And I've been on the Climate Council since it started, late 2020. I have served on another subcommittee of the council, and I currently serve on, which was cross-sector mitigation. I currently serve on the steering committee of the Climate Council. So if you want to know more about what's going on like the larger scale, I sometimes have answers, but I don't always know everything. So basically, give us your name, your pronouns if you would like to, what your background is, and how long, if you have been on this subcommittee or involved in the council, how long, and what your role is, and then we'll introduce the new members as well. So I'm just going to go around my screen of people I see who have been on this subcommittee for a while. So Anne, are you willing to share next?
Sure. A while feels like a weird, ambiguous amount of time. My name is Anna Gunther. I live in White River Junction. I do energy burden and transportation equity work at a nonprofit down here. And I think I have now actually been on the council or the subcommittee for over a year. I'm not exactly sure how. It does not feel like that amount of time. I feel like I am still adjusting to understanding the pace of government work. But I'm very happy to have some new faces. And Kelly, you gonna call on people?
Yeah.
You want me to?
That makes it easy. Beverly, would you introduce yourself? Unmuting on a phone is just process, especially if you have bad signal. You seem to have frozen, Beverly. I'm gonna say maybe we'll. Oh, you're not frozen anymore.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can. Yes.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear us?
More than $9,000.
More important.
And prices rise each year. Have you helped prepare your family to pay for these expenses when you're gone? With one call, and as little as 5 minutes, you can qualify for up to $25,000 in
We're
life
hearing
insurance.
background noise.
Taking care of us, even as full on. Help take care of your loved ones after you're gone with a guaranteed acceptance life insurance policy from United of Omaha today. Call 800-603-2770.
Beverly, can you hear me at all?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We were also hearing an advertisement for life insurance or something. So
Well, I'm at work and the TV is on, so you might have been hearing that in the background.
yeah, for some reason your host thought that was more important than you, which is not true. So please share.
I don't know how to work this on my phone. That's what I'm using as my phone. My name is Beverly Little Thunder, and I was on the subcommittee helping develop the guiding principles a couple of years ago. And I've sort of stayed in touch, kept all of the notes, been following, and just now have the capacity to jump back in and do what I can. I am Lakota. I'm from North Dakota originally, been in Vermont for about 20 years. And I am very concerned about the climate, have been very concerned about the climate for the last 40 years. Have been talking about it for the last 40 years. And just find it very amusing that so many people are interested in it now that the effects are hitting them in the face. So that's all I have for right now. And I don't know how to turn me off.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to always glad to see you whenever you can engage. We love your input. Sophie, you're next on my screen. I know you're not an official member, but you should definitely introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Velchop, she, her pronouns. As Kelly said, I am not a subcommittee member. My role is as a staff support member. So I work for the state of Vermont in their climate action office, which you'll learn a lot about. So we are a different group than the Vermont Climate Council, of which this subcommittee is part of. So the Climate Action Office is based out of the Agency of Natural Resources. And for those of you who are new, when we do our onboarding, we'll get a little deeper into some background and history about both the Vermont Climate Council and Climate Action Office, whatever. So you'll hear from me for, administrative support, like the onboarding. And it's a pleasure and a joy to be able to be part of each of these conversations and to help you all with this important work that you're moving forward. Yeah, so thanks for having me.
Sophie. Hi, Ed, welcome. We are going through introductions of folks who have been on this subcommittee for a little bit longer, and then we're gonna meet all the new folks that we have today. So come around to that. Next on Kashka. Yes, did you have a question?
Kelly, I'm so sorry, you guys. I just wanted to say hi. I have to keep driving to go get my kid. So I was wondering if I could just say hello because
Yes,
I just left the house.
And you're a former subcommittee member and also doing really important work. Please, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry to butt in. Hi everybody. It's so good to see everyone. I'm so happy to see Beverly and her awesome jewelry. I love her bracelet. My name is Kashka Orlo. She, her pronouns. I was on Just Transitions, not from the very beginning, kind of popped in right after it started, right after the conception. And kind of like some of you, I don't know, as I was telling Ed, who I told that he should definitely try out for this in Constancia as well. I was so lost in the beginning. I had no idea what this was. And so I just, I guess my whole thing is I want to make sure I've talked to Ed and Constancia about what it is that Just Transitions does in a sense, and the task of discussion and making sure that the other subcommittees and that the Climate Council and hopefully the legislature, that the policies are equitable, that we don't actually do anything. As far as I remember, that was for a long time when we got on and we said, why are we doing more? Why aren't we talking to people? And so I just wanted to make sure and put that out there to remember that whenever, somebody else is coming in, just give them your ear, make sure you're there to listen. And sometimes the explanations have to be made, several different times until it sinks in exactly kind of what what Just Transitions is tasked with doing. But I just wanted to say thank you so much. Thank you for accepting Ed, who's wonderful. I just stopped cleaning his sister's house, so I just left there. Yep. And then Constancia as well, and welcome all the new members. And it's so great to see everyone else as well. And what I do now is I have transitions from just transition to helping do community engagement on a larger scale, and making sure that the guiding principles, which were, just like Beverly said, she was huge in making those, putting those together. The guiding principles are being upheld throughout. So that's kind of my role. And thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm really glad you were able to stop driving and be safe and introduce yourself. That's wonderful. Thank you. So, yes, and the good reminders too. So, Abby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah,
I think it's
sure.
arranged on my screen, but you are next. So if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Abby Willard. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a co-chair along with Kelly of the Just Transition Subcommittee. I work for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets in our Agricultural Development Division. I started on the Just Transition Subcommittee back when the subcommittee was first initiated as staff support, and then stepped in when we had a chair transition to serve as a co-chair representing a state agency. So really exciting to see new subcommittee members joining us, and established subcommittee members that are here. So thank you. Welcome all.
Abby, all right. Other current, or yes, former up until now, current members. Denise, are you able to unmute and do a quick introduction?
Sure. So Denise Bailey, I work at Capstone. I have a seated position on the council. I represent our 5 community action agencies throughout the state. The partnership is called VCAP, Vermont Community Action Partnership. So I've been here, I think, only since fall. So yeah, I'm glad we're getting this committee back up and running.
Yeah, that's great. We're really happy to have you here. And we have one other council member who's on the subcommittee, Paula, and I think she'll be joining us later. So we'll have her introduce herself when she arrives. And yes, so for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, welcome so much. We're just so excited to have you here. If you'd be willing to go and just, I think a little bit different introduction, obviously, how long you've been on the subcommittee isn't relevant, but name, pronouns if you would like to, what you do outside of this, and why you're interested in this work. I think that would be a great way to just introduce yourself. And then at some point we will also have a bit of a conversation about anything that would be really helpful to you as you get oriented to this, but we'll do the actual orientations outside of this meeting. So Matthew, I see you raised your hand. I was going to call on you first also to introduce yourself. But
great minds think alike, you know. Yeah, greetings. My name is Matthew LaFleur. I use he, him pronouns. What brought me here today is the collaboration and the cooperation effort between other organizations across Vermont statewide that are doing the same exact work. I'm on 10 of them. So this is not something new to me because I'm already working in those other fields. So what I would like to see is how can we collaborate more together so we're not reinventing the wheel, as they call it. How can we learn from these other groups, you know, that I literally involved in 10 of them. So it's like I said, if I'm not in legislative, then I'm in a medical field. If I'm not in a medical field, I'm in education. And they all have one complexity problem, complex in itself, you know, pretty much. If you're talking climate change, you're talking complexity of the infrastructure. If you're talking medical, you're talking insurance and medical infrastructure, which is also complex, same as legislative. they all have that same complexity subset systems that are nobody that I'm talking of, don't want to touch it because it's so complex. What brought me here today is, from my experience, is, as a person of color that's neurodivergent, that sees the system in a different way, what I bring here is very special. It's, for one, I understand that plain language should be the most, most informal, first of all, because the stuff we're getting into, which, anything climate related, like, I can go on and on about, anything climate, legislative, medical, insurance, you name it. These are complexities that nobody wants to even talk about because they don't understand it. They can't understand it because it's not easy to understand. What I'm here today is how can I help you, help me, but help all of us, work together for the same common goal. Just not to reinvent the wheel, but also try to learn from something new. If another partner has something new within, a different, or a subcommittee or organizations, and most of all the climate action organizations like, renewable energy, which I'm a member of, which is not easy to understand. Vermont's, infrastructure. And plus, as a member of, Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns, which is 250, cities and towns across Vermont, working on their plans, which is not easy. It's, how can, together, how can we make it easy for people to understand what we're doing? And that is main number one. That's the reason why I'm involved in this. And like 10 others is, what? First of all, we got to make it plain language, easy to understand, summary guidance, and, tools, just because Vermont's an aging demographic state. And we know that most of those people that are volunteering are probably senior citizens or the elderly trying to do something for their community. And what we're trying to bring to them is they can't understand because as well, how do they reach? They don't understand this. And so to me, it's like, how can we collaborate together to make our message more user-friendly, but also more individual friendly too as well for that person. I look forward to working with you on this. Like I said, there's nothing new to me. I'm working, like I said, 10 others with the same, exact mindset of trying to collaborate together, try to understand that together it's more efficient to work together than trying to do this by ourselves in our own silos, and trying to, imagine what's possible when we actually come together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's wonderful and speaks so much to some of my own philosophy. I really appreciate that. Kelsey, did I see your hand up? And you're calling in from a stairwell. Very intrepid.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kelsey Pasteris. I use she, her pronouns. And I wanted to go after Matthew because I think we're going to be a good match, good teammates, because I tend to not think about the complexities of things. And so I think we'll be complementing each other because from my very black and white mind, I'm like, well, doesn't everyone look at the way they function from the standpoint of how do we reduce our impact? Like, isn't it as black and white as that? Every decision we make is from that standpoint. But I get it's not. But sometimes that's the way I run my day. And so helping people maybe see it that way. And then Matthew can be like, yeah, but it's a little more complex than that. So I am a registered nurse at main campus UVM in Burlington. And this is my first time being on a committee like this. At a hospital I used to work at, I was on like the environmental impact committee. So we did like little things like recycling the, you know, the sterile sheets, sterile containers for the operating room when they were just getting thrown away before, things like that. So, and on a personal level, I am really passionate about public transportation. Even though I live in rural Vermont, in Heinsberg, I take the bus every day into Burlington, and it's easy for me, but I get that it's not easy for everybody. So we try to show how exciting it is. And someone makes cookies for us on our bus, things like that to make it fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this group, and I really appreciate the explanation by Kashka that this work is not necessarily, you know, that we're going to be achieving tasks, but rather overseeing the living out the mission. So that's helpful. I look forward to getting to know everyone a bit better. And thanks for doing this work. It means a lot to our planet and to each other.
Kelsey, thank you. Wonderful introduction. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks so much. Apologies, I am not feeling my best today, so I hope with the mask and the soft voice you can still hear me, but let me know if I need to slow down. I'm Sam Lash, she, hers. I'm a climate and energy planner at Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. So, you know, Vermont has county structure, but no county government. The 11 regional planning commissions attempt somewhat to fill the gap in terms of planning on the longer term. And a few years ago, a bunch of the RPCs got legislative funding for the position of climate and energy, well, really energy planners, but ours is climate and energy, which is great. And one of the reasons why I applied specifically here. So I've been here for about 2 years. And it's now been sustained because we fulfill so many other functions at the RPC as well. I also am involved in our health equity work and our hazard mitigation planning to some extent. Yeah, I you know, I interfaced with this group following it as it formed as a citizen, as a resident. I also then began following the work through my own work. And I saw the just principles and the sort of rubric that came out of some of your earlier work applied in a climate caucus session at the legislature to the transportation bill last year, maybe even the year before. It must have been last year. And I was, I already was familiar with it, and I liked it as a resource, but I was really impressed by how it got the group of folks there to how much they gained from it. I think was what was even more impressive than it itself. That, you know, people who you would think would maybe have a wider perspective were really coming up with some of the things that we tend to talk about or talk with towns and talk with communities on a daily basis. And so seeing it as an effective tool was even cooler. So I did sort of modify that, and we're trying to use that and apply that to our regional plan and our chapters for our update in about a year. So starting to use that already. And you know, I work a lot in energy and climate planning with our 23 municipalities. I coordinate a lot and cooperate a lot with other RPCs. And so, you know, there's a whole bunch of different intersections for, how people interface with this. And I'm really passionate about, you know, what can we do in Vermont and how can we uplift and sort of not leave behind a bunch of folks, you know, everything from sort of your standard maybe your standard issues around renewable energy generation or energy burden or transportation and hazard recovery or disaster recovery, et cetera. But also, you know, it's a very real impact of climate change in Vermont that folks are moving here with a lot of means, usually from outside the state. I mean, we welcome everybody, and that's not a problem inherently, but we're seeing sort of the perpetuation of this dispersed rural settlement, long driveways, lots of land, and not a lot of investment in community infrastructure. And that's not really the way that Vermont has been trying to go to make it, you know, affordable and sustainable for folks who already live here as well. So, you know, trying on the longer term to also rethink a lot of our sort of planning paradigm. So I'll stop rambling and say thank you so much. And yeah.
Thank you so much. And that I included why your name rang a bell, because I think I've been in some meetings where you spoke or did something, so thank you. I'm really excited to have your experience and everything on this subcommittee. Ed, it seems like you might be. Ed, are you available to introduce yourself, or are you getting interrupted by somebody in the room? I can't. Oh, try again. I think we can hear you.
Yeah. I've been up to Vermont 7 years ago and live with my sister and brother-in-law. And as far as environment, I think we should all care. The problem is, I think I told Sophia that we live in a state where the money isn't, we don't have the economic freedom to do a lot of stuff. So I don't think we should be, you're scaring a lot of people. But they feel that we keep doing stuff, we're gonna be adding to their expenses, which they cannot meet at this time. That's all.
Any more about, where you're from, or
Oh, I'm from New York, Long Island area. I'm from
Sorry,
Long Island area, Western Nassau. Does that help?
sorry, I couldn't quite, it's coming in a little bit echoey, so I couldn't quite hear you. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I come from Long Island. I spent most of my life. Most was Eastern Nassau. Then the last 5 years I was in Freeport, New York.
And then what part of Vermont are you in now?
Well, I'm in South Hero. I'm in the
Oh,
islands.
Thank you. I think that was what I missed. Thank you. Okay, you're not too far from me. I'm up here in Swanton right now, based in St. Albans for my business. So welcome so much. Glad to have you here. Was there anything else you wanted to add about your interest in being on this subcommittee, or is that short and sweet is great too? That's just wanted to know if there was anything else.
No, nothing right now. Right now, I'm just observing. Right now.
That's wonderful. No, and that's also excellent and totally acceptable, because it's a lot. So thank you all so much. Yes, again, I'm just excited so much to have all of you here, and to get to work with such a wonderful variety of people who with different expertise and experiences. And I'm very, 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 very excited. So, and I'm excited to meet the other new folks. Hopefully everyone will be here next month. So quick update on youth nominees. We had a nomination, and Anna got to interview her, and I don't know if we need to go over it the way we did nominees, because talking about somebody in a public meeting, it's kind of uncomfortable. But seemingly I think it'll go to the steering committee for approval on next week. Well, we have to give it to them by tomorrow, right, Sophie? And then they'll approve at the next meeting. And I don't see why they would say no. They did have questions about why our committee is so large, and I already talked about that a little bit, is that we need and want as much of a diverse group of folks on this as possible. So yes. Oh, thanks, Matthew. Oh, even closer neighbor. Sorry, that came to me directly. So yes, I think the next step there, I don't know, Sophie, Abby, did you also greenlight the youth nominee?
Yeah, I think that's great.
We can move forward. So anyway, I don't know if we wanted to just give a little bit of information about her and who she is and all of that, or if we can wait till next time. Since I wasn't at the last month meeting, I'm feeling a bit like I don't really know how we did all of this.
Yeah, I mean, we just had the one youth nominee, and so Kelly and Abby have both given their thumbs up and had a chance to correspond with this nominee over email. And so it's all good to go for the steering committee. I guess I would say if anybody else wants to be involved and, maybe to email. But I think otherwise we're good to go for the next step in the process, which is steering committee approval.
Great. And I think everybody will have Sophie's email because of interacting to prepare for this. And yes, oh, and I can also drop my email in the chat because I like to put things on my state email, but I don't check it as often. So I like people to send things to my personal email. So I'll drop that in a moment. Yes, very excited. Hopefully everything goes through and she'll be able to attend our next meeting. She seems really cool. And then for the onboarding process, we do want to make sure that people don't feel as overwhelmed and confused as Kashka described feeling when we first started. Frankly, it was a brand new climate council, brand new steering committee. Nothing had been done. So I'm hoping that this time it's a little bit more smooth because we've done stuff and we know what we're doing. And we also have existing members who can help with the process. Whereas before it was not so much that way. So I guess in the next minute or two, anything that's really rising to the top of something that you really, really want to make sure is answered in your onboarding or that you get to talk about, I would just take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe just to have that as something. Raise your hand or unmute if you're having trouble finding that option of the new folks here, or anyone who joined the committee and is saying, I wish I had learned this or known this or been told whatever. Anything from folks who've been on this subcommittee for a while that you wish you had learned. And this isn't your only opportunity to share this, but if there are any things that just are right at the top of your mind and you want to mention, this would be a good time.
I wish I knew. I wish I knew, or somebody had told me right away how to fill out the per diem form and who to send it to.
Yes, thank you, Kashka. Yes, and it's changed also. So I think we send them to you, Sophie, right? Okay, so that'll definitely be part of it. And I'm hoping that was already written down. That is an interesting, like, very almost, it's not quite literally on paper, but it's a very manual process in the state. But we do get per diems for our work here, so that's really good. Sam, let's see, clear goals for this year, actionable items for the committee itself versus goals for Vermont and VCV, Vermont Climate Council.
Extra V, sorry, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I got
VCC, thank you, sorry.
VCC. No, that totally. There's a lot of acronyms around here. Yes, that's great. I think that's really helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to get too much into that without our full cohort of new folks. Any others before? Yes, Matthew, please.
Clear, easy to understand guidance, of what you want us to do. Because we're not legislators, believe me. I'm hearing that from a lot of my committees, and I'm hearing that from organizations that I work with. One of them is UVM CDCI and a UVM Autism Collaborative, which does medical and education field at the same time. I haven't discussed that, but that's one organization I work, and I work in dual roles in that, which is not easy. Education and medical are both complexity, which, like I said, it's a headache in itself. And then, like I said, Vermont, I'm a member of Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns Equity, which does the same thing with municipals across the state, which also complexity. And yeah, and then what tops it off, I'm also a transportation subcommittee member of the Sierra Club of Vermont, which does all the transportation and climate change of Vermont. So yes, again, complexity. Each of these organizations that I joined are organizations that they need help in that nobody really wants to pursue because they're complex. Vermont's complex in its own way. And it's hard to understand it because we make it we make it not understandable. So to members out there. So like I said, and that's the reason why I'm on there is to make it plain language friendly, make it easy for people to understand this, because this is what they're seeing is I don't want to be involved with anything because you are making it too hard for us to be involved. And like I said, if we can just a simple ask, simple guidance, just say, is this working well enough for you? Or should we make our language more clearer for those individuals to understand? Like I said, everybody here is not a legislator. Everybody here across the state is not an elected official in those ties where we know everything, but nobody else here outside those spectrums do. And as someone that, learns things differently and do things differently, like I said, I'm neurodivergent, I have autism. I do things differently, but I learn things differently, and it has to adjust for the individual access need of the person. And if we can't get our messages or our information to that person or individual that wants that information, then they're going to ask, what's this? I can't understand this. So I do think, we got to make our language more clear, precise, and understandable so everybody can get it, so they understand what we're asking of. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I agree. And my hope, hopefully next month, Mona will be here, and she also has a really good perspective as a non-native English speaker, member of the Arabic speaking community. And she did, and also if you all want to check out, we'll talk about this actually a little bit later in our agenda, but she did a great talk during the Just Transitions moment at the Climate Council meeting on Monday, and got to share some of her perspective. And those of us who've been on this subcommittee have heard it a lot, and it was really great to see how she presented it to the full council and how folks were really taking it in a meaningful way. So Paula, real quick, I will get to you in just a moment. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. We were just going through any other things, and I do see Kelsey. That's a really, really good question, and hopefully would have been an obvious one, but very important. An overview of committees and organizations and their overlap, like an org chart, and I think especially when it comes to how we support other subcommittees and the Climate Council as a whole, that's going to be super helpful. And part of why we're going to talk about being a liaison for other subcommittees, but we're not even going to get into the weeds on any specific subcommittees. Oh, thank you, Sophie. I didn't know if it had been posted. At the end, you can listen to and watch Mona's bit, and it was really cool. So, okay, any last things before Paula gets to introduce herself, and then we move on to our next agenda item? Yeah, Anna, I see. Yeah.
Know that there are some legal guidelines that I don't fully understand, but with open meeting law, but I think any chance to sort of organically interact with each other, the new or the old council or not, subcommittee member, whatever we are, people working, just I think I could have benefited from just having somebody that I could ask like my stupid questions to, where I didn't want to ask it on a recorded 2-hour official government meeting. So whatever we can do that is within open meeting law to provide that kind of sort of organic auxiliary support, I think would be good.
Yes, absolutely. That's really important. And yeah, so very, very quick for those who might not be familiar, open meeting law means that when we have meetings like this, they're open to the public, even if they're on Zoom or Teams. And so that's why they're being recorded also, is if you couldn't make it to this time slot, you can watch it later. So everything here is recorded, it's available to the public. Also, there's the Public Records Act, and that means that any everything that we do as part of this subcommittee is potentially viewable by the public. If somebody wants to know what I wrote to Anna in an email about the Just Transition Subcommittee, they could read that. So you'll get into all of this in your onboarding, because there's actually very official trail. We don't have to reinvent this one. There's very official training on this, but those are the two things. And so it can feel like nothing can be, as you said, organic. Nothing can be as easy as just talking to each other, especially when we're all over the state and we're not seeing each other in an office every day and talking by the water cooler. So that's a really, really good point, and I really appreciate that. Abby.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer maybe like a little context and then a suggestion. So as Kelly was just describing, as new subcommittee members, the Vermont Climate Action Office will offer some sort of onboarding training that will talk about some of the pieces around per diems and the open meeting law and the like. But we also, as a subcommittee, that was actually a suggestion both that Denise and Danielle offered at our last meeting, that we as a subcommittee could probably also offer more guidance and resources and materials to new subcommittee members about either the work that we've been doing and the great list of things that you've already suggested, as an augmentation to the onboarding process. That's, again, more about the Climate Council, the structure, and kind of like the bigger picture. So one thing that I would love to, I think would be valuable to me, and maybe to the entire subcommittee, would be to just do a review of the guiding principles in the scoring rubric, which were one of those like original tasks that Beverly and others mentioned that were kind of like early accomplishments of this subcommittee, and then talk a little bit about some of the vision for the intent of our work. And we've done a fair bit of those conversations over the past year, almost as like a way of trying to redefine ourselves, since that like core function and purpose has been accomplished. And so I think that gets back to the comment that Sam, maybe that you offered, of like having clear goals for the year. So anyway, those would just be my two additions that I think could be helpful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful too. That's good points. Any last things before we let Paula introduce herself? And we'll have more time for all of this. As I said, this isn't your only chance. Just wanted, if there was something that was right top of your mind that you wanted to mention, this would be a good time. Paula, hi, glad you could make it. So
hi, sorry I was late.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you gave us heads up, so that's always appreciated. Things happen. So we'll let you introduce or meet all the new people at some point. We'll do probably another round of introductions next month when we have hopefully everybody. But for people who've been on this subcommittee and before this, just we were saying name, pronouns if you'd like to, what your role is on the subcommittee, or in your case as a counselor also, and how long you've been doing this. So just like a quick little overview like that. And where you're based in Vermont is also nice. We didn't all go through that, but it's nice to know where everyone's located so that we can say, how's your weather over there in Alberg?
Yeah. Well, it's sunny here in Brattleboro in the southeast corner of the state. I'm Paula Melton. I use she, her pronouns, and I don't have any special role on the subcommittee, but I am a member of the Climate Council. I am the member representing municipal governments. And I was sort of eligible for that because I serve on the representative town meeting here in Brattleboro, and I'm on the finance committee and have done various other municipal related work, but I'm not like a civil servant kind of municipal employee or anything. And did I answer all the questions? Oh, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, I'm also on the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee as well.
I was going to say yes about that. So we'll go into more about all those subcommittees, but yes, that's also important that you have that, other expertise. Great.
Yeah, so I can liaise.
Yes, exactly. So that's actually, back to my agenda. The next thing that we were going to talk about. So I think I'll just give a quick overview of the concept of being a liaison and mention a few things that are things that we're thinking about. And again, being not our full group and all of that, not doing any decisions, but I think it's a good opportunity to introduce this concept and maybe think about things that we would like to discuss further in the future. So there are a few other subcommittees, and we've been talking about different ways to support them. One main thing is that we had a full climate council in-person meeting in January. Yeah, thanks, Paula. And I said, hey, I would really like to know other subcommittees and other members of the climate council. The goal isn't necessarily to follow the Just Transitions guiding principles and fill out the rubric and say, I did it, checked all the boxes. The goal is to center equity authentically and in a real way. And so what can we be doing to help make sure that is happening, to support you, to help make sure you are asking the questions that need to be asked and then hopefully answering them in a meaningful way. And so it was more of an open question, and I mentioned this again at the Climate Council meeting on Monday. Please be thinking about this as you're meeting in your subcommittees. What can our subcommittee do to help support you in centering equity considerations in everything you're doing? And the Climate Council as a whole needs to come up with a revision to the climate action plan by next June 2025. Is that the deadline? Something like that. So pretty soon here, sometime in 2025, the revision has to come out. And the revision needs to make some movement on some emissions reduction, but also there's been a lot of attention put on building resilience and adaptation measures and things, because weather is getting weird and we need to plan ahead, as we've all learned from big flooding events last summer. So when planning for these things, we want to be able to support these other subcommittees, and rather than have them come here all the time and say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? We're hoping to, and they could, but we're hoping to have folks act as liaisons. And we did this in our very first draft of the climate action plan. We had members of this subcommittee acting as liaisons with other subcommittees. We were also, thanks Abby, yes, so Abby just dropped the structural graphic showing all the task groups and things. Should we maybe even pull that up and look at it together? Or how, do you know when
Yeah,
this
we
was?
to do a screen share of that or something?
You know how long ago that was, Abby?
It doesn't have a date on it.
It's a little bit older, so some of these might have changed, but it's definitely a good reference. I'm going to try to keep it high level. I'm going to try not to get in the weeds. Having done this for 4 years or whatever, it's hard. So please pull me out if I say anything that's confusing. So what the liaisons did in the past, and this doesn't have to be the role going forward, is they would sit on other subcommittees. They would attend meetings. We've also asked for more clarity on what that looks like. Do you have to sit in silent and be like a member of the public? That doesn't feel quite right, but being there, attending those meetings, being able to report back to us, and potentially being able to say, hey, here's an equity consideration I don't know if you thought of, but also making sure that it's a comfortable place where you don't have to be the one person who's just saying, you forgot about this equity thing every time, right? So that you have this entire subcommittee to help back you up with those sorts of things. And so this is going to be a conversation that we should have about how to support our members in being present to those conversations, and then also supporting anything that might need to be addressed or brought up the great news is that almost everybody on these other subcommittees is just also wanting to do this. They want to center equity. They really do have their intentions in the right place. They're also sometimes going to be more focused on some other thing about like emissions reduction or a very specific policy detail, and it's not always easy to keep all of those things in your head. As you said, Matthew, like complexity is hard to do and keep all that complexity in your head. So my hope is that liaisons from this subcommittee can be there and have that equity, just transition mind hat on their heads and be thinking about those things more first and foremost, while other people are maybe having conversations about very technical things or might get distracted by some other obviously very important goal, such as reducing emissions and things like that, and helping to find that balance where we can accomplish all the things that we need to accomplish to make this world and this state a better place. So that's my trying to keep it very high level overview of what a liaison would do. We still have some questions that we need to have answered, such as, and I did tell the Climate Council on Monday that it's a non-negotiable. If you're a liaison and you sit on these committee meetings, you need a full per diem. The per diems are $50 for a meeting that you're supposed to go to that's public, but it's $6.25 an hour for everything outside of that. And I said, that's not, I can't have people sit in on a thing and have $6.25 an hour. So that was something I just said, that's a no-go, but we do want to be able to support this. So hopefully that all comes through. We'll get clarity on that. And then what the role is and what level are you able to participate at, right? Are you there as a member of the public who is just listening? Or are you sort of there as a subcommittee member? And some of us, it's easy, like Paula's on another subcommittee. Great. That's not complicated. She could be our liaison for that subcommittee, but other people could also as well. So I know that's a little bit complicated. Any questions? Was that too confusing? Did I explain it clearly enough? Yes, Matthew.
Yeah, it is a little bit trying to wrap my head around this. It is sorry to that's where plain language comes in. Unfortunately, there's a lot. It ain't just this. Like I said, it's just other subcommittees I'm on want plain language. They want to understand what you're talking about and how you want to address this. So plus, who's your audience? Who are you addressing this to in the first place? And how can you interact with these other subcommittees if we're going too complex heavy? Some of the stuff is easy to understand. Just say we want this certain thing, just plain language it. This is what I see in my work is very, very hard for me to actually tell other people, just make it plain language friendly. On these other 10 subcommittees, like I said, most of them are, like I said, medical. I'm in the medical field. I'm in the insurance field. I'm in fields where complexity is number one, which it shouldn't be, because we are addressing the public. We are addressing these other subcommittees. Some of these other subcommittees that we're trying to liaison may see their different point of views, but if we're going to go like legislative heavy on them, they don't want no reaction of it. And I do have a question for you, other thing about compensation, which that's a big thing across the state. Mm-hmm. It's not just in this subcommittee. I've seen others, I've been involved with others, and they want compensation for the work they do. So if they're there working there or doing anything that's, time consuming, they should be compensated for what they do. And I'm seeing this across the statewide. So what I suggest, and this is just suggestion recommendation, if we're gonna, is how we interact with these other groups. Just tell them we have a plain language, simple format summary, a glossary or document that says what we want to see moving forward, or are there any more ideas, that could still be plain language friendly, so other people like myself don't have to sit there and tell you, you lost me, or you forgot me, or what are you talking about? Because that's when we lost our message, what we're trying to say. So it's how we're saying it and how we're productively and efficiently saying it to other members, because like I said, not all brains work the same. And everybody has their way of thinking and looking at the material or the documents that you present. Like I said, it's just to me, it's like, okay, you lost me here. Could you bring it down somewhere where I can understand, to understand what you're trying to say? It's just that type of, for me, it's like more clarity about what you're trying to say, how you're trying to, what's your message and what you're trying to get at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. And all the per diem stuff will be explained very clearly in the onboarding. And we've been asking for different and more compensation for a while. It hasn't quite come through, but it's definitely been heard loud and clear and asked to multiple people. Sam, please, I know you in a busy office, so I didn't want to make you wait any longer.
Thanks. Actually, I was just going to go off of what Matthew was sort of talking about and definitely defer to the folks who've been around here, and also very interested in hearing what the other communities, other committees say that would be useful for them from this committee. But I think at some point building a list of the things that we could offer would be interesting. So is that, reviewing documents for plain language, that could be like a service, right? Or maybe it's coming to a meeting, or maybe it's planning an engagement strategy, or maybe it's checking policy to ensure it's, whatever it is, like a list of services of basically as a way of holding space in their processes for equity for I think that's sometimes where it has to start. Obviously, it would be great if it was guiding it and it was throughout, but if we can just sort of give them options of like, here are the ways to interact with us, here are the services, here are the skill sets of the folks here, that might be a way to sort of, make sure that there's a stop by the committee for good, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really great thought. So I'm so excited to work with all of you because I'm already loving the ideas and the enthusiasm. I want to just double check my agenda here, make sure we're not running. We are set for public comment at 3:15, so I'm not sure if we have any members of the public. Oh, okay. So again, this was sort of meant to be an introductory thing, and please, any questions that you still might have, or things that you want to make sure are part of the onboarding process. Beverly, were you sort of, did you want to say anything, or are you just shooing flies? You're good? I can't hear you. You're on mute. I know. I can tell what you're saying, except that I can't hear you. Oh. If you figure it out and you have something to say, we'll defer. We'll jump over to you. So one other thing that has to do, so the liaison thing would be that we would find subcommittee meetings that we could attend, would be interested in attending, also hopefully aligning interest, and they meet on certain schedules. And so trying to find one that you would typically be able to attend. And then that also brings us to what's our meeting schedule. We are thinking if we, at some point when we have this idea of, okay, you attend this subcommittee, you attend this subcommittee, we'll report back, we have that set, that system in place, then we might not be meeting every month as Just Transitions. We might have a different schedule where we meet a little bit less frequently for a little while. And while we're talking about that, I just also wanted to check with folks, and I think because we're not all here, we may want to do this via an email poll or something, but just to make sure that this time that we've been doing for the last 4 years of 4 to 6 p.m. every third Thursday still does work for most folks. And I know that was one of the questions we asked when we interviewed everybody. But if there are thoughts about that, we'll just circle back with folks. I don't want to take up a lot of time right now because I don't think we need to go through a scheduling conversation, but that would be something that, yes, sorry, Pashka, I just saw a very good comment. I'm getting distracted. But that would be something that we can also revisit as we move forward, especially as we are taking on the liaison responsibilities. And the hope is that that wouldn't add a huge extra time burden, that we would space out our subcommittee meetings appropriately so that you could attend another subcommittee and not have to do 3 meetings every month, but it could still just be 1 or 2 a month, which is more reasonable. So, Kashka, yes, she said, I think every new Just Transition member should take the time to study the guiding principles and the rubric, and then seasoned members should offer a full discussion as to how liaisons will hold to those while attending other meetings. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I do think we'll do a full rundown of refresher and rundown of the guiding principles, because I think even those of us who have been here this whole time, I mean, maybe especially those of us who have been here this whole time need to review them and look at them more carefully. So, okay. We have 1 minute before we're scheduled for public comment. Before we do that and move on to a couple of updates, are there any last things that anyone feels they need to share or ask or say?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that I think this liaison concept, and maybe something to kind of sit with until next month, is that, and others have spoken to this, so maybe this is just like me using my words, but to say the same thing, that we want to ensure that equity is centered and that just transition considerations are engaged in every conversation. And we're trying to and exploring the different ways that that can happen across the Climate Council. And we have attempted to have other subcommittee members come to the Just Transition Subcommittee, and that may not be the most economical or viable option. And so it may make sense at times for us to, rather than meet just as a Just Transition Subcommittee, kind of integrate ourselves into the other subcommittees and task groups of the Climate Council. And that's that liaison role of like bringing with us the knowledge that we have and the expertise that each lived experience member of this subcommittee brings to the Climate Council as a whole, to ensure that, yes, we develop guiding principles, and yes, there's this expectation that equity is centered and that just transitions are being considered, but the voices of this subcommittee really get kind of echoed throughout the Climate Council's efforts. And so I think that's the concept, and I think we're really just curious and open to some more in-depth conversation of like, what are the best strategies to do that? And does that mean that we meet less frequently as a subcommittee to make space for attendance at other meetings? So that's what I think we're sort of grappling with and looking forward to talking about in April with the full subcommittee.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. Yes, and that's, yeah, I guess my hope was to plant a seed of a concept and then have people think about it and come back with what seems like it will be, that it will work, and that everyone who's in that liaison role feels like they have the full support of this community, this subcommittee, to be able to be effective in that role. And so yes, it's something that we've done a little bit in the past, but I think we can make this something that works really, really well. And I am just, again, very excited to have people who have new and different thoughts that we can work together and create something really helpful. So I don't see any members of the public, but if I'm missing any, oh, and Matthew, we can jump back to you in a minute. I just want to make sure if there are members of the public that I can't see somehow, that I do pause for public comment. And if I'm missing them because they're on a different screen somehow, unmute, raise your hand. Okay. Don't think we have members of the public. So great. I mean, not great, but we can move on. Matthew, did you have a comment or something that you
I have
want
a
to share?
quick question. What is this guiding principle and rubric everybody's been talking about?
Ah,
He's been saying
so-
that for a long time in his meetings, and I did
Yes.
check the list. It is password protected by the guiding principle, so you're gonna have to. I don't know if that was meant to as a referral for or I just for me it's like when people sit there and say guiding principle and rubric, I say what are you trying to say or trying to and that's why I'm saying is that plain language is now would be
Yes,
useful because when you're trying to it's just your audience who you're trying to address that. If I were to say that to someone, they will probably confuse them. And I was just wondering what if that's if we could find a different word or terminology to make it easier for other people to say, oh, this is something, because when somebody says guiding principles or rubric, I'm thinking of a rubric cube at this point. I'm not thinking about something else. It's just I'm just using that as a what is this guiding principle and rubric everybody's talking about? That's just a question. Thank you. That's very confusing.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yes. Oh, and Beverly, you unmuted. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about, the rubrics and the guiding principles. And the guiding principles were a long document that we came up with during the first year very quickly to kind of light a fire underneath people's decisions on how they were approaching this climate change. And rubrics was it's some sort of a form that they kind of put together that I don't even understand. But you're right. When we talk about guiding principles and we talk about the rubrics, I think we need to find a different way to describe that so that everybody can understand it. Because there are some people who, like myself, who when I think of a Rubik's Cube, I think of all the little colored cubes. And I know that's not what it is, only because I was a part of, watching it be built. So, that's something I would like to see us talk about so that as a group, we all are on the same page. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Beverly. Yes, and I apologize. I shouldn't have assumed, but I had a sense that folks maybe had just gotten that as like an intro, and I didn't realize that you hadn't seen these or had the link. I did drop the link that's not password protected into the chat for this document, and this is and yes, obviously wait for the onboarding. Thanks, Kashka. But we will this is the main document and body of work that the Just Transition Subcommittee put together at the most of it was done in 2021, and it was to help guide the Climate Council and the other subcommittees in developing the climate action plan. So that is that. And the rubric actually, so the principles for a just transition, guiding principles, was the main body of work. The rubric was developed a little bit later and not necessarily with everybody from the subcommittee, but it was an attempt to make it a little bit more something where someone could have a quick look. And it's sort of it's a scoring rubric. It's basically it asks the same questions, but it gives you more of a tabular format. So it's a table and you can see the questions and say, did we do this? Did we do this? And it's might be a more it might be a way that some people could what's that, Kashka?
Checklist. It's like a checklist. Yep.
Yeah. And so for some folks who think about these things differently, it might be an easier way to try to notice if they have missed something or if they have some blind spots that they need to address about a particular plan or policy. So yes, but we will definitely go into this more in onboarding. And apologies again for making the assumption that folks knew about just this particular document and what we had done in the past. So, yeah, were people able to open the link that I dropped in? Because I couldn't open Sophie's, but I could open that one. So, okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I don't exactly know what's that. I've had that happen. It's very strange. Okay. Thank you. Yes, and thank you again so much for bringing that up, Matthew. I really appreciate that. So the last section of our agenda, and I do want to see if Sophie has anything that we need to, you know, any updates, but I was going to give a quick update on so when I talked about Mona, got a member of our subcommittee speaking at the Climate Council meeting, we've had a practice of having a just transitions moment, and some of the times it's been, and I think some of the most powerful times, but not, there have been other good ones, has been somebody who's a member of a frontline or impacted community who can speak from their personal experience, but also can speak from their experience with working with other community members. I remember we had a youth member speak, and it was very powerful. We've had folks from various different communities, and recently a lot of them have been people who are reporting on some really exciting and interesting work that's being done at a state level, or sometimes other, maybe even bigger levels, and that's also really cool. But I really missed hearing directly from people who are members of communities that are being impacted, disproportionately impacted, and can speak to, and then folks who can speak a little bit more about their broader community and not just their own personal experience, but that can also be really important as well. So I was asking for this for a while, and I finally just said, please, can we do this? So at the last subcommittee, or sorry, the last Climate Council meeting, we had Mona come and speak, and she shared some of her personal experience. She shared some of her work on this subcommittee, and also some of her experience working with the Arabic speaking community. And she's also been helping with a focus group where she gets to speak with other members of the Arabic speaking community and hear from them and hear what their concerns and what they're struggling with climate action and things like, or climate change impact. And yes, and it was really amazing. And so I believe Sophie dropped the link to the video and gave the time to look for if you would like to watch that. It was really cool. So the reason I give this background is I would love to be able to help find more people who are willing and able to speak from that real lived experience and also share stories from their wider community, because I do think it helps to bring in more stories. And if we can find the folks who are willing and able to speak, then we can get them on the agenda. If we don't, then it may just be some person who randomly shows up and says, I would like to talk. So not randomly, but I think if we can find community members who seem like they would be able to really tell a good story that can help bring that human element in a meaningful way, I would really like that personally, but I also think that would help with what our charge is as this subcommittee, is to help make sure that we bring those voices forward. And so the public engagement team, Consensus Building Institute, is working on this. I think Sophie, in her role, will be able to also identify folks who might be good candidates. But I just wanted to put it out there as this is something where if we know people and we can sort of start a short list of folks who would be good candidates, and then also just check with them that they'd be willing, we may be able to slot them into future meetings. And obviously we would give them guidance on what they should talk about and how much time, things like that. So that's what that's about. Paula, I see your
Yeah,
hand.
I was just curious. I don't know the process by which those speakers get chosen. So I was wondering if you could, is it just like the steering committee, or is it the climate action office, or is it CBI?
Yeah, so yes, it's not like a very formalized process as far as I know. Yeah, it's often been like the climate action office and maybe steering committee members, maybe Consensus Building Institute will sort of come up with some ideas for the agenda, and then the steering committee approves the agenda. So since I've put it out there, I really would like this to not always be people who are, work for the state or are in some sort of like official capacity. I'd like it to be community members. People, and then some of those folks obviously overlap, but not just hearing from folks who are policy makers or policy enactors, right? So yes, now that I've said this and been pretty intentional about it, I do think that we can make that something that, so long as we have good candidates, we can make sure that they get on the agenda. So, and yeah, but that's anyway. So yes, the process is not a very, very formal one. It's like find something that's going to be helpful and engaging and on point, and then we can. I saw something from Sam in the chat, but I also saw Matthew, you had your hand up a couple of times. So why don't you go ahead and then I'll read what Sam
Yes,
said.
the question I was going to ask that similar to that is, yeah, it's important. Does this have to be someone from this type of committee group, or are you looking for someone out in the community to actually participate?
Right.
Like I said, does that mean that exclude us as members here, or are you looking for someone outside? Like you said, it wasn't formal. So like I said, if it's not formal, that means, it sounds like anybody, as long as they're not within the legislative body or someone that's working with the state, they could actually.
Right. And
yeah, I just had to figure out, my mind is, just a minute. My mind is trying to figure out, see this picture through someone within this community. So like myself, if I were to, like I said, if it's possible, since I'm from that community, type of lens, and I've done it before, climate change rally, in Montpelier, I've done that before. I was a speaker there. So, like I said, I don't mind doing that again if you need someone to, have that, heart and passion, trying to get to the point of what we're trying to ask of elected officials, or what is our biggest ask moving forward, so other people can understand what our message is. And our message is, trying to involve more equity. Most of the stuff I'm involved right now does involve with equity, because that's something big that Vermont is somewhat trying to grasp, is still missing, but it's starting to intertwine with the systems that, that need it the most. So thank you for, clarifying that. But like I said, if that's, not formal, like I said, I'm willing to, help out on that, because I do think, having, diverse voices in this process will get our message, will not only stand up our message, but also get make our message more clear of what we want in the near, not just near future, but what we want to see moving forward for everyone in Vermont. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think maybe to clarify and answer a couple of those questions, it really could be any member of our community, our wider community here, that has something to share about usually a lived experience and maybe the stories that they've heard from their closer community, right? And being willing to speak is important. Not everybody is willing to speak on a public or recorded meeting about their personal or their community's experiences. So it could be you, Matthew. It could be any one of us if we have a story to tell. It could be somebody who's not at all connected to this work, but we know them, we connect with them through some of our public outreach, and they are just have something really meaningful about their experience. And I want to just bring more experiences to the Climate Council as a whole, and potentially we could offer any of these folks, if they have something that really ties in with one of the other subcommittees very closely, like a farmer who wants to talk to the Ag and Ecosystem Subcommittee about their experience with flooding or losing their crops to a late freeze or something, right? Anything like that that helps them have the wider context and get more of a picture of what folks who aren't able to do this day in and day out are dealing with and what their needs are. That would be the goal, is to have the voices of people who aren't able to attend these meetings and spend all of this time doing this work heard by the folks who do have the ability to spend their time doing this work and incorporate it into the final product. If that makes
Yes,
sense.
Matthew, thank you. I don't mind helping out with this. It's just something, if you're giving me an opportunity and a platform to use my voice, then I'll do it. It's just, it's dear to me that, that I'm doing this because, like everybody else, it's just, you got to stand up for what you believe in. And what I believe in is, everybody has a part of this together. No one different. No one should be left alone. No one should be doing this work alone. And to me, it's like, this is where the collaboration and cooperation is best at, because this is us. This is what we do. And I like, doing this because it's a chance for me to share my story, but also a chance to share what Vermont truly can become if we truly work together. Thank you very much.
Yes, agreed, 100%. Paula, and then I do have a few things in the chat I didn't want to ignore, but go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, actually, I was wanting to pick up on what Sam was saying in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I really appreciate your comment, Sam, about like, do we have a clear sense of how these experiences that we're hearing about are then being, integrated into our policy and really centered in our policy? I think that would be, so like at the last council meeting, I was kind of advocating for the steering committee to sort of come up with some implementation guidance, like to help each subcommittee sort of like to set us up for success, to center equity in the way, like consistently across subcommittees and across the council. And I'm just wondering, like from Kelly and Abby mostly, but maybe from everybody here to get ideas, like, does this subcommittee have a role to play in kind of like bumping stuff to the subcommittee or the steering committee level about like the way the council just operates, not necessarily about how we're writing the cap, but the climate action plan, which is like the big, huge document that's our big project right now. But how can we assist the larger council with its own processes and the way that we integrate public comment, the way we welcome the public in. There are a lot of processes that are kind of, have just been flawed for a long time in the way that they work. Like the whole public comment period is like, nobody really knows what to say next. Somebody comments and it's like, thank you for your comment. And then like, it just sort of floats off into the ether. And I think it would be really helpful for the council to be inviting public comment, and as they do that, being clear that about like how that information is going to be used with like within itself, and also for the people who are commenting, or for speakers we invite to give these reflections for just transitions. So I'm kind of curious if people think that would be a good role for this subcommittee.
Yeah, I think that's a great, that builds on exactly this. Like, when you come to speak, as Sam said, and Sam, you're also welcome to use your voice about it if you want, but if you're not, but yes, basically what Sam said was, what are they getting out of it? Feedback incorporated to a specific policy action proposal, or for example, having some folks come talk about their experience in the July flooding, focus on gaps that could be, and I think, yes, that's 100% focus on gaps that could be closed in our response to climate emergencies, focusing on gaps that could be closed in things like, oh, we all need to get electric cars, but no one can afford them. Whatever, those things, yes. Those are very helpful. And I think any of those voices being brought forward is really nice. And then I also saw, and Sam, I didn't want to, if you did want to say something out loud, that's also great.
No, that's great. I was just thinking that maybe a role for this committee is also to make sure that when people speak, that there's a list of proposals or policies or something that goes along with them, so that there's like a tangible actions that folks are presented with to take to close the gaps. Like,
Yeah.
so many people are burdened, like who are already burdened with these things, are now getting called on to speak at so many places, and that there's all sorts of taxation based on identities, right? So just to ensure that if they're gonna show up and come and share their story, which usually involves a lot, right? That there's some sort of action based on it, so that we just don't keep dragging people out and nothing comes of it. And I just, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I thank you. Yeah, that's really important. And then Abby wrote, is the ask to hold space just at the Vermont Climate Council meetings or other meetings also? And this is where I think Paula adding there's a lot that we could be doing, and this is why we're not making decisions at this meeting today. I'm just wanting to talk about some of the ideas to get the wheels turning in our brains about what we might be able to do. And I think absolutely helping with how we deal with public comment in Vermont Climate Council and in subcommittee meetings, and trying to make that a more positive experience for everybody would be awesome. And we've done some things that have helped change it a little bit, but I think there's more that we can do. And we're not the only people, but I think some of the comments we've had in our subcommittee have made an impact and changed some of the way that public comment has been handled. And then yes, sorry, I think I said the things, but yes, I would love to see what we think we can do to help make this all work well. And part of what I'm hoping that we can have is feedback from other subcommittees about how we can help them best, but we can also give our own thoughts about how we can help them and come up with a plan that will hopefully have the results, which are centering equity in everything we do. So, and then one thing that we will want to do is, I've said to the other subcommittees, we want your feedback. We want your thoughts about how we could support you. We will want to set a deadline for them, but that doesn't need to be right now, but it should probably be decided at our next meeting, when we want to say, okay, we need your thoughts and we need them by this date. So, let's see, I see one more comment from Kelsey. Public comments or sharing stories is also to bring awareness and not necessarily needing action right away. Correct, yes. But yeah, it's hard for, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, so, and acknowledgement and feeling heard is part of what people are looking for, and our committee can be that. I appreciate that. So yes, anyway, I feel very optimistic about things, despite sometimes things being a little bit hectic. Bye, Sam. Oh, so fast. And not knowing what's going on with the weather, but also liking to be with all these wonderful, thoughtful folks, and I'm just very excited about this. So, one more comment from Paula. Yes, getting a lot out of the reflections. It's mostly not actionable, but there's value in holding space for non-actionable but passionate testimony. And exactly, I think it helps a lot because, as I said, folks want to do the right thing, but they can get so focused on whatever project they're working on, of like some very technical policy. It helps to have, and I speak from my own personal experience also, I can get super hyper focused on something, having a different voice come in and share a different experience from one that I've had is so important. And that's something that I think everybody can benefit from time to time, to get us out of our heads. Yeah, reminding us of the why. Thank you, Kelsey. So, and Paula, I think you both said the same thing at the same time almost. So any other, I don't know that there's anything else that we necessarily need to go over today, since we don't really have our full team. I don't think anything else was particularly time sensitive. Sophie, Abby, anything I'm overlooking that's important, or do you think we can do our 5:45 end time like we planned?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that there was anything more. I do see Matthew's hand though.
I do, yes, and Paula. Sophie, did you have any? No? All right. Matthew, yes. Go ahead.
So we're looking, circle back, so you're looking for someone at either in an advisory role or an ambassador role. Ambassador, which I have worked with the Department of Health, Department of Vermont Health Equity, which I work with other towns with their problems. That's an ambassador role. Or are we looking for something in an advisory role? That's the reason why I put it in there, child. We're looking for someone to be like an advisor toward the Climate Council, or we're looking for someone that does, like an ambassador role toward, the state, something like that. That's just a question. Thank you very much. That's something I'm just clarifying.
Yes, thank you. I missed that, or I misread that. So I apologize for not responding. This would be probably a one-time opportunity to share a story, not necessarily an ongoing role. Obviously, if somebody has that passion and wants to make it something that they do and it's an ongoing role, either ambassador or advisory, that could, then they might find the right people and get into that role. But this would just basically be a probably one-time opportunity to share their experience and the experience of their most immediate community, and then yes, it could potentially lead to something else, but this would be a one-time opportunity to speak.
Oh, thank you. I just wondering. So this is just a one-time trying to publicly speaking from the heart, just something, as a speaker to get at the issues that we're trying to get at, and trying to support other individuals that are trying to get at that same picture, that same grasp of that same straw, so we could be united but have unity when we're doing this work together. Thank you for clarification.
Yes, thanks for the question. And typically it's 10 or 15 minutes, maybe with time for questions, if that's comfortable for the person sharing their story. But again, once that does open up other opportunities potentially if that person wants to engage further. Paula.
Hi, thank you. I'm just wondering, are we clear on what the agenda of the next meeting is going to include, and do you need any, at what point does that need to be finalized, and do you want input on that?
Oh, thank you. Yes. I don't know that we have, I think we have some really good actions from this, but also sometimes it's a little bit tough. Abby and I tend to be a little busy and not always on top of this.
Relatable.
I do think it might be a good practice to have a quick, hey, if you have any agenda items that anything that we could send out an email saying we're working on this. We can't all have a big group email chat because of
open meeting law. Yep.
But we can definitely just put out a quick, hey, anything that you definitely wanted to make sure we included based on our conversation last month, something like that.
Yeah.
Especially this time, I think that'd be very helpful for me. Also.
Cool.
Bye, Kashka. Thanks for being here.
Bye, Kashka.
Sophie,
we can also create space here at the end of the meeting, Paula, as well, or others, if there was something in particular that you were picking up from the conversation that you're like, oh, let's make sure we return to that next month, you know, I think that works also.
Yeah.
Sorry for extending the meeting beyond the 5:45.
No, that was a really good question, and I think we would appreciate more of a group input on this because of the fact that by the time we plan the next one, we're kind of like, what were the things we were going to say?
That's
So
good to
I
know.
appreciate-
Yeah.
I
good.
appreciate that. Yes, Sophie.
Yeah, mine is, so to hop on that of what we may want to talk about next meeting, there's two things that come to mind for me that I'll share now. One is the fact, so we talked about onboarding for new members and that there's a lot of sort of like technical admin stuff, which we're gonna take care of. We've already got an onboarding all set for that. But then there's the more content stuff that's very specific to Just Transition. So we threw around guiding principles for Just Transition and its rubric. That kind of content, we don't have onboarding set up for that deep dive into that. And last meeting, Denise and I think Danielle had offered that they might be interested in supporting the development of that kind of a thing. I'd be happy to help support that do background support as staff. So that's one thing that comes to mind. I don't know if I see we no longer have quorum, I believe, to make that kind of a decision right now, I think, if I'm understanding how the meeting process goes. But then there's, bye Beverly, see you next time. The other thing that came up the meeting before, which we attended to in the moment, but has this longer term question about it, is the process for choosing new subcommittee members. And I think Just Transitions, pulled together a process, but that was less so the case for other subcommittees. And there's no unifying process across the different subcommittees, which the other meeting was identified as an equity issue. And so that's another thing to potentially talk about more as a potential role for this subcommittee. It sounds like if there were something that this subcommittee could sort of put forward for consideration by the steering committee, that might be sort of a first step towards getting towards a unified process for new member acquisition. Along those lines, the Vermont Climate Council as a whole has a governance document, and that could also be a potential role for the Just Transition Subcommittee, would be to have a crack at that and look through that governance document from the equity lens, which I know, Kelly, you've been part of the steering committee, but I think that having that document shared amongst Just Transition Subcommittee members with the opportunity to raise any flags of, hey, there might be an equity issue, or you might want to add in something here for the governance document, which applies to the Vermont Climate Council as a whole, is another thing for consideration for the subcommittee.
Yes, thanks. And while we're talking about onboarding, I definitely think we should go over the guiding principles as an entire subcommittee at our next meeting. But yes, giving people an intro to it beforehand in the onboarding would be great. And there's also the work plan. There's like a next steps document that was just reviewed by the Climate Council. It's still a draft, but I think that would also be really helpful for all of its subcommittee members to look at, because it says this is what Just Transition is going to be. So it tells us what we're supposed to do, and it tells us what all the other subcommittees are supposed to do to get the revision ready for the new version of the climate action plan. So that would definitely be a good one. And then the guidance document also does have information about subcommittees and what's expected of them. So those are the three big things I think would be helpful to go over. Thanks for bringing that up, because I think because I had to like very suddenly miss the last meeting, I didn't have all those pieces in my brain. So, thank you. And I think what we can do is before we actually sit down to set the agenda, we can do another quick reminder of like, hey, anything that you particularly wanted to make sure was included. But I do think that lots of things came up, and hopefully we have those in our notes and we can include those. So, thank you all so much. Thanks for those of you who could stay a little bit longer. And yes, Matthew, one last thing before we go.
Yeah, I just got done looking at your Rubik's Cube type of. It's so complicated. Is there a different format that people are used to, like Google Docs, or Google take something different that we could use? Because that Rubik's, the breakdown of that is so confusing. Whereas, we got other, methods that people are so accustomed to of doing those type of questionnaires,
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's a way to make this more easier, because that looked a little, complicated than what it should be. I know what it's saying, but is there a better system or a better way to make that more, familiar for people, to take those by a poll or by those, Google Docs? You say the same questions, they can either ... click on the dots, or, type in something very, a format where it's easier for them to, hey, I understand this, what you're trying to say. It just, when I just got done looking at that, I say, this Rubik's is confusing. So is there a better method to get what we're trying to get at in that question than what it stand out on that page? Because it looks very confusing. Thank you.
I think that's something that we can actually be talking about, because we did have somebody fill out the rubric and bring it to our meeting, and I don't think it accomplished what we needed it to accomplish, but there were several things about that didn't quite work. There was one person of a task group who filled it out with his own thoughts, and it didn't. So there are lots of things, and I definitely agree that there could be other ways and maybe multiple different tools, because people don't all think or learn in the same way. Different tools for different applications, and all hopefully getting to the same goal that we're working on. So thank you. I think there's
thank you. It just, I looked at that and it was pretty confusing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh, good question, Denise. An equity training refresher be good.
I just mentioned that because so Sue and Indra just gave me a ton of files, right? And I know a lot of work has been done and there was some training.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the rubric and whether or not it's confusing and what lens people are using it through, it would be nice if we had a training so that we all speak the same language when we're doing this work.
Thank you. Yes. And Paula, correct. I think we did something very, very early when the subcommittee was first formed and haven't really, and that we should definitely do that again. Thank you. Yes. Wonderful. Anna, thank you for offering to work with Matthew and others for the plain language thing. I appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you all so much. It's so wonderful to meet the new folks and see you all here. And I'm very energized by all of the wonderful, thoughtful contributions we had today. So I really appreciate it. And I think we do have our meeting scheduled for next month, but then we will be deciding what the next meeting schedule is going forward from there. Is that correct, Sophie, Abby? Great. Okay.
Yep, I think we'll talk about the calendars and schedules then.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Enjoy the sunshine. For those of you who have it, I see it shining on some faces.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry I had to be late.
Bye, all.
Thank you all. Take care.